Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's guest is Michelle Knight, a personal branding consultant. Michelle teaches female entrepreneurs who struggle with building a revenue-generating business how to brand themselves and market their mission and message online through the power of story so they can make more money and impact. Marketing is a hot-button issue for coaches. Michelle offers up a suggestion that's so old school it's become new school again. Leverage your website and optimize it for SEO. If you feel like you're spinning your wheels trying to get traction on social media, an increasingly difficult space for certain kinds of health coaches to peddle their wares, why not take a crack at creating your very own platform instead on the website you've already bought and paid for? With some simple tweaks, it can be a reliable source of traffic. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. By the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Enrollment is now open for the fall semester of the Primal Health Coach Institute Level 2 certification course, an advanced coaching course that teaches you how to create transformational coach-client relationships. In our mind, the best way to grow your coaching practice. Not only will you learn and practice advanced coaching skills, but this course also satisfies the educational requirements to enable you to sit for the NBC HWC credentialing exam so you can become a board-certified health and wellness coach. Fun fact, PHCI has a 100% pass rate for the board exam. Every one of our graduates who've sat the board exam have passed it. Stay tuned to the end of the show to learn more or visit primalhealthcoach.com/level2. With that brief sponsorship message out of the way, let's get into this exceptional conversation with our guest, Michelle Knight.
All right, Michelle Knight, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. We're super excited to talk to you because you are a bit of an expert here in the number one most insecure aspect of anyone entering into a new business, in particular health coaching, which is how do I find clients? How do I brand myself? How do I put myself out there? And you've got a unique take on this. So would you mind telling us a little bit about kind of you and your background and what led you to your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. This is my favorite topic to talk about, so it should be a good one. So I started my business in 2016, just 1 month after my son was born. I was going through a difficult postpartum experience and turned to my husband and said, I don't know if I want to go back to work. And so that was a little shocking because, like many people listening, I had never started an online business before. I had never really thought about having my own business. I always thought I was going to go back to work and work full time. That was always our plan. But something was really pulling me to create something different. So for the next 8 months, I was working a 9 to 5, raising a new baby, navigating that life, and really figuring out how do you build an online business, downloading all the freebies, watching all the webinars, taking all the courses, doing all the things. And at about 8 months in, I realized, Michelle, you don't have any clients. You're like showing up. I was doing live streams. I was trying to grow my email list, all the things, and nothing was happening. And I had a moment where I knew I was leaving my 9 to 5. This was already kind of set in stone as a deadline. I sat down and I was like, I got to start over. I got to figure out what's missing. And all I had at that moment was kind of my story and who I was. So I rebranded in a weekend. I redefined my ideal customer, and I started showing up with different messaging and different intention. And I started signing clients. Like the people who had already been there in this small following suddenly began to convert. The offer didn't change. Nothing changed except for me, my brand, my messaging, and how I was showing up. And that really led me to growing my business to 6 figures in 1 year. And I focused my energy and attention on building a solid brand, sharing stories, and building connections. And today I run a multi 6 figure a year business. I've retired my husband from his job. We travel with our toddler. And it really comes down time and time again to this strong brand foundation that I accidentally created and now teach other people how to do.
Okay,
Love
you
it.
accidentally created it. I would love to dive into more of that bit of the story. So you went, you circled the wagons for one weekend,
Mhm.
changed the way you talk to your ideal client, and then the floodgates open. So
Yeah.
can you elaborate on that? Sorry, give us like a bit more detail about what you changed, why you think that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So during that time when I was kind of doing a self-assessment, like again, I had taken the courses, I had done the stuff, I had been told what branding was and what I should focus my energy and attention on. I had a website and I was doing this little self-assessment and was like, Michelle, this website like legit sucks. Not sucks because the colors and the logo and stuff, but that you had no idea who I was by looking at this website. And so one of the things that I really did that weekend, and one of the things I teach now, is I got in touch with my story. I started to think, what has led me to where I am? Why am I creating this brand in the first place? I came from a background in nonprofit, but my old website wasn't even clear what my mission was or the work that I wanted to put out into the world. So I really sat down seriously with like pen and paper. I still have this notebook and just started writing down who I was, how I wanted to show up, what values I wanted to carry in, what different stories I could share to connect. And then I also went much deeper in ideal client work than I had ever been taught before. Now, this was 5 years ago. So we do know a lot more than we did back then. But it used to be like, get on the phone with 2 people, chat with them, and then make your whole entire website. It's like, we need a little bit more information if we're creating messaging. And so I sat down and really got into the head of my ideal customer and said, what are their fears? What would they say to me? Where are they at right now? What parts of my story would really connect with them and build a deeper level of trust? And from that, what I did was then redid my website, rewrote my whole story, rewrote my messaging on my page, switched out all the photos to be like travel photos with my face, scrapped my logo because it didn't really matter. I realized. And then what I started doing is when I would send emails, I would tell story in each of my emails and I started getting responses. And when I would do live videos, I stopped worrying about the perfect background and I'd go live on my lunch break in my car because like me, my audience was also growing their business. And so it was really this connection piece that made the biggest difference. And what I know now is that trust is why people buy. Right? Trust and an emotional connection is why someone invests. And that's exactly what I started bringing into my brand.
Hallelujah. Erin, so we have these little business development tasks in our course. What's the first one?
Your story.
Yes, hallelujah. So you are so speaking our language, girl, right now, because we talk about how over and over again to remove this like sense of imposter syndrome is that your story has value. So first of all, first up, to your point, tell your story. And then I even heard you use those words. Where is the value in there? Right? What value can I bring? So can you walk us through a little bit about just what that experience was like for you? Because we see this happening with coaches a lot that hang a shingle, they spend more time on the website and the logo than they ever really spend talking about themselves. And I think some of this comes from an insecure place that they're afraid to put themselves out there and talk about themselves kind of thing. Like I get that. But it is a bit of an emotional journey to really get deep there. So would you mind telling us a little bit about that experience? First of all, what was the aha moment that was like, there needs to be more of me in there? And then what it was like to get true to that and then actually use it.
Yeah. So the aha moment for me was that first email response. I was like, I've been sending emails weekly, multiple times a week. I'm no stranger to email marketing, right? And that first email response that I got to my brand story made me realize oh my gosh, Michelle, you haven't even shared why you have your business. Like,
Mhm.
like what a connection piece to just share like the purpose behind this, to share my story of the postpartum period. And then another driving force for me in running my business and ultimately this life of freedom that I've created is that I lost my brother to cancer 12 years ago. And I hadn't even shared those pieces of who I was. And so that was the big aha moment for me. And that's really where I started. I was like, all right, let's just start actually sharing my brand story. I mean, how many people listening right now have their story on their About Me page and then they just hope and pray to the gods that like people land on it, right? We know it doesn't work like that. So many people who are really scared of sharing their story in the beginning or a little like worried about maybe the everyday stories or how to find those stories, you have your brand story. My guess is you ask them to figure that out in the very first part of the course, right? And so they have that, and you can really start sharing that in different ways, breaking it down, using it in different emails, social media. So I really started to do that. And I started to pay attention at the connection, right? It wasn't just oh, thanks for this email. It was, oh my gosh, I felt that way too. Oh, it's so great to hear that someone has gone through this before. Oh, I didn't know that about you. What a fun fact. That I started to recognize that like the trust was being built. And that was the moment that I was like, Michelle, if you really put emphasis on building trust and an emotional connection with your audience, it won't matter the size of your audience. You'll be able to, turn them into paying customers. And so that's when I really started to fall in love with emotional branding, which is something that I talk about a lot. And one of the elements of emotional branding, focusing on the value and the feeling and connection with your audience, is using those stories to do that. Because like you said, in the beginning, look, I'm not the only branding coach out there. Your listeners are like, there's a lot of us health coaches listening right now. I mean, the reality is that there are a lot of people doing similar work. The only thing that's going to separate you is going to be your story, which you already have.
Mm-hmm. Can you just help us with an example of maybe what content was like for you before your awakening and then what it's like now? So like maybe give us an example of what an email contained before versus what an email contained after.
Yeah. Ooh. So my emails before were really about uh, let me see the best way that I can say this. They were about me. So that some people get really confused with the storytelling piece. Like there's stories that you can tell that are all about you. Those are not profitable in business, right? Your stories need to connect and provide value and be of service to your audience because we're trying to move people around. So I would, say like, oh, I did this today and yada, 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 or whatever, but it wasn't like a deep connecting type of story. And they really just fell flat. Like, rather than feeling like I was talking to a friend in my email marketing, it was more like, hey, wrote this new blog post, love for you to check it out. It's just very, very basic, bare bones. And I think part of that was because I was afraid that people wouldn't read long emails, or I was afraid that people didn't have the time. Well, I quickly realized that if they're pulled in and they feel that connection, that they will, and they'll read them and they'll respond. My marketing today is completely different. So I know so much more. Again, this is 5 years ago. It makes me feel like I was a dinosaur back then, but I mean, it's not that long ago. But today, I really focus on 3 pieces. So number one, I always make sure that there is a story element involved. I know that storytelling provides that emotional connection, and it makes your content 22 times more memorable. So if someone sees your content and it's got even one single line of storytelling intertwined in it, bam, they're more likely to remember it while they're scrolling on social media, so on and so forth. The next thing I do is always get super clear on the value that it's providing. So why am I creating this post? I'm not just creating this post to create a post. What's the value to my audience? I get really clear on that before I even write a piece of content. And then I want my content to be educational, right? One of my goals as a mentor, as a coach, is to make sure that I'm moving my customer through the buying process. There are multiple stages to that. Someone might find me just having a problem identified, and that's all that they know. It's my job to really, educate them and move them through. Some people might be at a point where they're like ready to invest. I want to give them that golden nugget that they go, this is the person for me. So I have a clearer structure I know what I'm doing now, to be honest.
I'm glad that you gave us that sort of 3-part breakdown, because I guess I kind of see when I'm kind of auditing some of our students to see why their efforts aren't netting them clients, I can see that there's sort of two really divergent paths. One is like, I'm just talking about myself, like me, and bye. And the second one is I'm overwhelming these people with education that they didn't ask for.
Right.
And so there's like, there has to be this meshing. So that's a really nimble formula. Like, let's get in with a story because that makes it memorable. Let's make this applicable to the person reading it. Like, what problem am I offering to solve for my ideal client by sharing this story? And then here's a little something I can teach you. And not always having to sell either. Like, not every message has to be a call to action and like, work with me, click this button to sign up. It's just like, hey, just wanted to let you noodle on that for a while. We'll see you next time, kind of thing. And there's a really nice balance of talking about yourself, but also bringing it around to the person you're talking to.
Yeah, I love what you said about it's not always about selling. You know, one of the things that I teach is that marketing in and of itself is selling. We sometimes separate it and we're like, oh, we have branding, then we have marketing, and then we have selling. But if you're doing your marketing correctly, you are selling in the process because it is really focused on that human to human marketing and that connection. So yeah, you don't always have to say, go to my website and click through, right? It can be like, did this resonate with you? Let me know. Send me a DM. You know, all those connection pieces are ultimately helping you sell.
Yeah, one thing I've started doing in the last couple of years is when I send an email to my list, I'll say, hey, reply back if you have any thoughts on this. Like, and people do.
Yeah.
And people do. It's like email recipients didn't even know that was an option before. Like, oh, I'm being email marketed to. And even if you just add that little call to action, like, let me know what you thought about this, just reply back. They're like, oh, I didn't know I could reply back. And it's legit me on the other end of that email. And it's been really interesting to actually engage in back and forth conversations with your email audience.
I think people are always, I think as humans, we're always looking for permission, right? And so like even just giving your audience that permission to, going back to the connection and branding piece, to send you a DM, right? It's not off limits, to respond to your email. But also, I think that's one of the powerful things about storytelling as well, is by sharing stories that really connect with your audience, you're giving them permission to like tap into that piece or to share that piece of themselves or to seek support, you know, just by you showing up and sharing a piece of your story.
Yeah. So when I think through why stories sell so well, because first of all, I think if you're a great storyteller, people want to listen to you. You know, so and I have a follow-up question to kind of that statement in a second. But at the end of the day, that story, if it's well told, it makes you relatable, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to kind of build trust. And then from there, if assuming, of course, that story has some sort of lesson embedded in it, it creates value. And then that's what's going to build an audience that actually follows you, because they know that when you say something, it's not just for the sake of saying something and getting their attention, right? That you're trying to provide value there. So I guess what I would love to kind of get your take on is, do you have a general framework for how to structure a story, or kind of what's the formula for making a great, valuable story?
Yeah.
And does it always have to be about you?
Yes, great question. So I think I'll answer that. Does it always have to be about you at the end? Because I've got a really good experiment that was done that I think is incredibly valuable. But you know, you bring up a good point, you know, about like the authenticity, the relatability piece of it. 86% of consumers say that they will purchase from brands that are authentic to them, right? So people do care. And I know authenticity is thrown around like a buzzword all the time, but it's true, you know, like people want to know that the person that's selling the product, the service, it doesn't matter, is a real person, and they do care about that. So when it comes to structuring a story, you know, we can go back to what we learned in school. It truly is what you see in movies, what you see, you know, on stage, in a book. It follows that same framework. I have over the past few years scrunched it down a bit because so many of my clients are focused on social media content, you know, and they're like, how am I supposed to share a story in 2 sentences if I'm focusing on like the climax and all of the different pieces? So, you know, I kind of teach like a micro story framework. And so one of the key things that I always tell people to remember is just really thinking about that arch, you know, that we learned back in school. And so the biggest thing is setting up the story, you know, and introducing some sort of conflict or tension. So this doesn't have to be like, and then I fell on my face or something, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be like crazy. It could just be like, and then I turned to my husband and said, which is a story that I share a lot from my founder story, that produces conflict. And that is what makes a really great story, because we as listeners, as humans, need a resolve. And that is why we hang on. That is why we wait till the next week to watch our favorite shows, right? It's called open looping, and it's introducing this like tension that we just have to, conclude. And then finally the resolve. So, resolving the story for them, and then having some sort of CTA. So those are really the three pieces that I recommend for social media. And it's a lot easier than I think we make it up in our head. And I'll give you an example. So going back to that story that I shared at the beginning of when I decided to start my own business, I share this little one-liner, two-liner quite often on social media and in my email marketing. And I say, I was sitting on the couch in a complete postpartum fog, breastfeeding my son. I turned to my husband and I said, I think I want to leave my job. He took a deep breath, he let it out, and he said, okay. And then I just go into talking about how I started my business and, this is how I support entrepreneurs. One single sentence to captivate your audience, pull them in, set it up, give that climax, that tension, the resolve, and then whatever my CTA would be at the end. And then the other rule of thumb that I really love to encourage my audience to take into consideration is to paint a picture. Don't leave out the details. Don't try and skirt over the details. Those are important. And that's what's really going to pull your audience in, which is essential for social media, as we all know. So that's a little bit of that framework and those key pieces. When it comes to telling stories, does it always have to be you? The answer is no. In the beginning, that's going to be the easiest. I have found you have your brand story. It's what you know. Maybe you haven't worked with a lot of clients. You don't have testimonials. You're just like, hey, just showing up, sharing my expertise and, get in front of my ideal customer. But as you grow your business, sharing client stories is amazing. And we sometimes sell ourselves short when we share testimonials, and we'll say, this client said this, quote, line, quote, and one of the things that I love to teach is actually when you're getting testimonials from your audience, to ask them to fill out open question surveys and then piece that together and be able to use that to actually tell their story online. So you can use your story, you can use the story of your clients, but then you can also tell what I like to call kind of make-believe stories, which are figurative stories. And there was an experiment that was done. It's like the eBay experiment. You guys might be familiar with this, where two gentlemen bought a bunch of products and they only spent like $129. Like one was like a paperweight. It was just a bunch of random products that you could get at the dollar store. Then they hired a bunch of creative writers to create stories about each of those products. And so they had like a paperweight that they bought for $1, that because of this made up story, it sold for $129. At the end of the experiment, they had made $3.6 million. And the products didn't change. It was all about the story. So people, I think, get really worried about like, whose story am I telling and all those pieces, but it's the art of storytelling. And that's what I really like to drive home. And so sometimes that can be as simple as on a sales page where you're saying, imagine waking up one day and that's storytelling, right? You're not sharing your story per se. You're kind of having your audience in this like forward thinking mode, really seeing themselves in that possibility, and you're presenting it through storytelling.
Okay, that's a good little tip, that last bit at the end, because we get a lot of students who are practicing coaches that don't have clients, and they're like, I don't know what to talk about. I can't keep talking about myself all day long. And then what they default to is getting into like lecture mode.
Right.
I'm going to teach you about gut health. And it's like, I didn't ask about gut health kind of thing, right? So yeah, the forward looking, the sort of figurative copywriting, but a lot of people don't feel like they're good writers. Do you offer your clients sort of like Mad Libs ways?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I don't actually, but I do love to, like we talked about here, like I do love to say like this is the framework. I love to give more frameworks of like, all right, these are your little check marks in your brain, does my story that I'm sharing, let's say it's on social media, capture my audience's attention with a photo or a headline, am I leading into it? Because I really love, one of my favorite things about my clients is when they come to me not feeling confident in writing copy, or that they're incapable of it, because I've actually worked with people who are like, I could never do this, I have to hire a copywriter, to then offer those suggestions and then watch them learn the process. So the other thing that I have also found with working with my clients is when we switch our mindset to saying, I'm writing to a friend, I'm talking to a friend, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Because if you come from a corporate world, it can be really hard to switch that focus. And so typically the like writing an email to a friend works really well. And I also encourage my clients to record themselves. This is something I did in the beginning. I clearly love to talk. This is why I do podcasts. So I recorded myself what I wanted to say in an email or a social media post, and then I would transcribe that. And I found that actually was a lot easier for me. And I kind of found my rhythm and my voice, and I've carried that, through the years.
That's a cool tip.
Yeah.
Because honestly, folks who say, oh, I'm just not a good writer, it's like, well, can you tell a story? Yeah. That's all. Right. I think that even using the word writing or copywriting is throwing up a barrier for a lot of people. It's like, I'm not a copywriter, I'm a banker, whatever, right? And it's like, don't worry, this isn't some kind of resume line item. Just simply tell a story. And I've heard it described as writing letters to your client. Or, you said to a friend, but imagine writing a letter to your ideal client, and just what would you say to them, and touching on the things that keep them awake at night and helping them kind of just feel better. And I think what's interesting about that kind of storytelling, I was just thinking about this as you were sharing, is that there's a short game and a long game element to it both. And what I mean by that is I literally just signed a client the other day who has followed me for 3 years, and I never heard a peep from her. And she finally said, I've read everything you've written for the last 3 years, and every single thing resonated with me. And I finally did it. And I have a client that has followed me for 1 week and read what I wrote in the last week. She was like, everything you wrote in the last week, I loved, and I needed to work with it. Like the storytelling has a lot of different kinds of legs for different kinds of clients. So I think this is important because I like to manage expectations from people who will say, well, I've been telling stories in my Instagram feed for a month and I don't have any clients yet. It's like,
right.
You're practicing, right?
Yeah. Practicing is really the key. I think we can say this as people who've run, successful businesses. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself and your audience along the way. The biggest thing piece of advice that I will give, if you are in a place where you're like, well, I am doing this and nothing's happened, is self-audit yourself. Do what I did at that 8-month mark to say, okay, well, what might be missing? And the biggest thing that I see missing is that you're not really speaking to your ideal customer. Maybe you don't really know who that is. That work, I often say, is one of the most pivotal parts of the branding process, because it's going to help you in all of your marketing moving forward. It tells you what type of content to create. It tells you what type of stories to tell. It tells you where to show up on social media. And so I think that what I typically tell my clients is that if you're having trouble with your copy converting, let's go back to our ideal client work and say, do we really know who this person is? Or are we just like sitting at the surface? Because it's got to be much deeper than that. Like we've talked about, it's got to be emotional. And we often talk about the internal and the external factors. So like the external factors of your ideal customer are the things that they're like saying, that they'll just like tell you on social media. The internal is the stuff that they write in their journal and Google. So, that's good, because you can use things like Answer the Public to find out what people Google. And that'll also give you more information about really what is happening with your ideal customer. So you can not just talk about gut health, right? But talk about the real reasons that this is important and how it's really affecting them.
Yeah. Erin and I see this in just the health and wellness entrepreneur realm, where you see people that are really, so much of that content really is not geared to the end client. They're talking to the profession. They're talking to other health coaches. Like they're trying to establish I don't know, credibility or dominance or whatever in a realm so that they think that builds confidence that clearly this person's very smart and she knows what she's doing. I don't understand half of what she says, but clearly she's smart. So I'm going to go ask her for help. It doesn't work that way. If people can't understand you, they're going to feel more intimidated by you, right? But we see that as a common thing a lot. People writing these very elaborate, detailed blog posts about, insert topic here. And really, to your point, it reads more like a lecture and educate. And look, I would argue too that there's probably a place for that from time to time, maybe on a website under educational content, right? Something that people might want to foresee. But from a standpoint of marketing, people just kind of bypass it. It's not interesting. But that being said, as far as the whole like, oh, I've been out here for a whole month and no one's contacted me yet. This happens all the time. Do you have a general kind of rule of thumb that you think from a time perspective, what's a realistic expectation for stuff to really take root and start to gel?
I say 90 days. I'm a big 90-day person. Now, that's not to say you just keep like hitting your head against the wall for 90 days. You don't make any adjustments, but don't scrap it, right? Like it's kind of that. I feel like as an entrepreneur, we have to get really good at self-auditing. Like we have to look at it from an outsider perspective and say, all right, I really love this piece, but like, why this might not be working because of X, Y, and Z, right? The reason people might not be responding is because you don't actually have an audience. Okay, well then let's focus on our marketing and let's get in front of an audience. Storytelling is super powerful, but it's not going to bring all the powers that be and bring all the internet traffic to your website. It's going to make sure that the people who find you convert, but that could be like a marketing issue. So I think this like self-assessment really has to happen quite often. But my clients will kind of be like, my funnel's not working. I'm like, 5 people have gone through it. All right. We don't have enough data. And I don't think data is talked about enough with marketing is that like, look at your numbers. They tell you a lot about the gaps that might be happening in your funnels, on your website, in your social media, ads, right? Advertisements.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should segue into that. You're telling all the stories in the world and there's no eyeballs on it. So what are some tactics for getting in front of your ideal client?
Yeah. So through my journey of, the branding, I quickly fell in love with marketing because I realized you can have the coolest brand in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it doesn't do much good. And so I actually take a different approach than a lot of coaches in that I focus primarily on evergreen and search engine content. I started my business with a baby. I was working a 9 to 5. I traveled full time in an RV for 2 years. I'm not showing up on social media every day. Sorry, it's just not my cup of tea. And so I wanted to figure out ways to make sure that I was getting in front of my audience where they were ultimately searching for support. And so some of the things that I love to teach are search engine optimization. So, making sure that you're really focused on your industry specifically and the things that your audience is Googling, like we talked about before. I also really love Pinterest and or YouTube because they're both search engine platforms. So unlike Instagram or Facebook, Instagram's working on it. They're trying, but unlike those platforms, they're not really where people are going to solve their problems.
Right.
And we go to Pinterest is a huge search engine and it follows the same type of setup that Google uses, right? Titles, keywords, all those different things. People are searching for things on those platforms. Same with YouTube. Think about it. If you need to fix something in your house, you're like, how do I fix my dryer? And like a YouTube video comes up. So
true.
Those are really helpful platforms. And the beautiful thing about those platforms is it's not an everyday type of content situation. It's maybe once a week. Shoot, YouTube, you could do really strong research and get one video that goes viral and just keeps providing. And so I really love to focus on those type of platforms for time purposes, really, and longevity, because blog posts, we still have blog posts from 2016 that I got to hurry up that start to get traction and edit because they're crappy. But the title and the SEO is really good that now, they're doing well. And though the longevity is much more than, a post that you put on Instagram that might take you a similar amount of time to create if we really break it down. So consistent traffic is so important for branding because we need eyeballs on your brand, and then making sure that you have those pieces in place, like your strong story, those emotional pieces to convert, because most of the traffic that I love to teach and focus on goes to your website. And on your website, you have, strong storytelling, you have the elements of emotional branding, and you have a lead magnet. And so you're capturing that information, you're welcoming them into your community, and then you're able to nurture through storytelling and things like that through email marketing.
Oh my gosh, what a breath of fresh air to talk about something other than Facebook and Instagram. And I love that's such a great point as far as this evergreen available content out there that people, I just love that. I just, as a side note, my husband built our entire 50-foot retaining wall after having never done it before by researching it on YouTube. That's the first place he went. Okay. Built it by himself, probably saved us about $7,000. So what a great tip. And I love that. But I guess my next follow-up question is really explaining to our audience about SEO.
Yeah.
What does it mean and how do you optimize it? Because I know there's lots of companies out there that will hit you up saying, hey, I'm an SEO expert. Let's just kind of break that down for people. What is it? Yeah. Why is it important and how to improve it?
Yeah, absolutely. So SEO essentially stands for search engine optimization, right? And so in basic terms, as I like to tell my clients, it's if someone Googles something, you show up because your content is optimized for the keywords that they're searching for. So, when we talk about blog titles, YouTube titles, pin graphics, pin titles, blog descriptions, those are all places where you can really focus on SEO. That's kind of like the first level. I find that that's the easiest because it's like, just do your research. Research is important, and put it, and then ta-da, there's another level where you integrate the keywords that you find, and I'll give some tips on how to find them, into the actual content. So into the blog post, as alt text or captions of images, right? So the more keywords you have, think about the more keywords that you have, the more Google and these platforms know what you're actually talking about. If you don't have those keywords and your blog post is like my story about my dryer or something, you know what I mean? And you're actually talking, I'm looking at my dryer right now. It's in the laundry room, so we just can't stop talking about dryers. And the whole thing is about like how you started your health coaching business after something with your dryer. It's like Google doesn't know that you are wanting to attract people that are interested in health coaching because you're talking about your dryer. So I always tell people, like, titles should not be cute. Titles need to be rooted in research. They're not there to be, fluffy and fun. They need to be driven with data. And so once you understand kind of the search engine optimization piece, I think that one of the first things that entrepreneurs should do is set it up for their website. I have a tool that allows me to see what people have set up on their website. And it always blows my mind because I'm like, you don't even have a site title. What is happening here? So it's one of the things I accidentally did. Again, a lot of accidents in my career, but I accidentally created a site title and a site description that started doing really well and found myself ranking #1 on Google for branding and business coach. Now I know what I'm doing and I rank for multiple keywords. And so I always recommend that for the site as a whole, focus on your industry. If someone is at that stage 5 of the buying process where they're looking for a health coach to help them with, gut health or inflammation or any of those keywords, put that in your site title, put that in your site description, because that's going to help you get those clients who are at the buying stage with the credit card in hand and they're Googling for that type of support. The next phase is then to integrate the blog post and to really amp up the content on your website. And again, you can use you use the same strategies on YouTube and Pinterest. So this is why one of the things that I teach with content creation is actually reverse engineering SEO. So using tools that are out there at our disposal that are free, like Answer the Public, which I talked about already. I also, I teach SEO, but one of the leaders in this industry is Patel. He's where I learned a lot of my information and have used it and modified it to my business. But he has a tool called Uber Suggest. It's UBER Suggest. And it is a tool that he's optimized. It's my favorite, where you can go and you can type in keywords, right? Or topics, and they'll tell you, hey, how likely is it to rank for this? What kind of traffic does this subject line get? And you start to learn to play with your stuff, So if you have a title and you're like, well, this gets 0 searches a month, just tweaking one word could get 100, 150 searches a month. That's a big difference. And so what I recommend is that when you're planning out your blog content, you do this research ahead of time and then write your blog content, because that's really going to help you. Again, it's about getting the longevity, getting the most bang for the time that you're putting in to craft your content, and making sure that you have that consistent flow to your website.
Awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, the whole idea of like where to find keywords, because if you leave the keyword finding up to the entrepreneur, we'll pick keywords that we like. That might not. Yeah, I was thinking because, like, for example, the space I play in is like metabolism, which, is fat loss and weight loss, which is probably what people are Googling. But I hate working in weight loss. I want to work in like the anti-diet approach. But if I choose anti-dieting as my keyword, nobody's Googling anti-dieting. Right. It's the last thing they're Googling. People think they want, so it's like, I would choose that because that feels virtuous and right to me as a keyword, but that's not what we're doing here. This has to be really, really intentional.
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle, and I totally get it. And what I tell my clients is like, you've got to get in front of your ideal customer. So at the end of the day, you're not marketing for yourself, or like you said, for other health coaches, right? You're marketing for your ideal customer. So get them in the door. That's half the battle. And then that's where your approach, your values, your mission get to be front and center on your website, and people can decide if you're right for them or not. But yeah, if you've got some fancy term that nobody's looking, your website just goes sit there for a little while.
That's such a great point, Erin, though, because I completely get that. I get a lot of people whose their target audience are, I'm just going to, use you and I for an example, right? These women in their 40s or so that are just really struggling with weight loss, right? But mostly because their metabolism is messed up by, their environment, all of that. But at the end of the day, those women are still searching for weight loss or fat loss. So you need to be lumped into that group. That's what they're looking for. But this is where you have an opportunity to differentiate yourself, to sound different than everybody else, that this is doable without, meticulously tracking every calorie and making sure you're exercising every day until you're exhausted. And now you can't sleep, because you can actually paint the picture and set the trap for those other people that's what they teach you. You're going to teach them another way, but at the end of the day, you still have to be findable based on what they're searching for.
Yeah.
I get it, Erin. Yeah.
Well, and then it's like, so these tools that you suggested, like, I wouldn't even know this is going to sound terrible. Like, how am I even running a successful business? Because I don't even know what my ideal client is Googling. Like, what are they Googling? Are they like, I got to get this baby weight off. My child is 12 years old. It's long enough. Like, or what?
That's a good point. Baby weight. Yep.
Like, I don't know what they're Googling. So you're saying some of these tools will help you. Do they help you?
Yeah, they open essentially a can of worms, right? So like,
awesome.
So you're welcome. But I have a lot of clients who are like, I'm really struggling with content. And basically what we'll do is we'll go to the ideal client research. We'll say, well, what do we know? What are some of those key things that we know are current struggles with my ideal customer? Maybe we don't know all the internal factors. We don't know the exact words they would use to describe them, but like, we know generally, like, I know my audience struggles with content creation. Not very specific, but still gets me a starting point, right? Even branding. And then what you can do is you can take these broader terms, put them into search engines, or put them into Uber Suggest. Another one that I didn't mention is Keywords Everywhere. I'll just give you guys a bunch of tools here. And a lot of those platforms will offer suggestions related to what you put in. And so you're able to get down. And what I often find is, like, if I go type in content creation into a platform, and it's like, ooh, these are other things that people are searching for. How to find platforms to post on social media, how to find your content ideas. It's like blog post, blog post, blog post, blog post. And so a lot of the work is actually done for us, as long as we just get our foot in the door, rather than constantly spinning our wheels wondering, like, what should I talk about this week? And so a lot of my contents will my clients will do this this form of research and have 90 days of topics already mapped out ahead of time, and then it's just about them, you know, delivering the value.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That feels like a really intentional business practice, I guess, you know, because I think that there's a nebulousness to, I'm going to go start a business as a health coach. I guess I'm just going to start writing and telling stories, but there's some intentionality to it. Like treat it like a dang business. Like you wouldn't just float around telling stories about gut health, you know, in any other business. So let's like understand, let's be intentional about what the content we're creating. That's pretty cool. I think also, to go back to Laura's point, this is a breath of fresh air in some ways, because like the blog, the website, this is where a lot of people started.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went through this period of time where it's like, no, you don't even need a website or a blog. You just need to be on TikTok. And it's like, what? Oh, I just spent the last 5 years making a website and a blog. Okay. But like, and we keep hearing this more and more, like you described it as evergreen, and searchable, right? And that's still, it stands the test of time. Yeah. I mean, it went out of vogue for a while, but it stands the test of time. So it's really kind of, I think the renaissance of the blog is upon us.
Yeah. And like people who had blogs, they didn't suddenly stop getting traffic, just so everyone knows, right? They still had their blogs, but all these other, I like to call them distractions, presented themselves. And look, I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. I create reels. I love to dance to videos and point to words on my screen. Like, love to do that because it's fun for me, and I know it's a way to build trust and connection with my audience, but I'm not using it to get in front of my audience. I'm not using it to magically find new people. And so it's not that those pieces are bad, but if you don't have that strong foundation, you can be posting videos on TikTok all day, but then what do people do? How are they going to message you? You know, we might lose them in the process of then following you on Instagram and then messaging you on Instagram, and then like having a home base, which is what I refer to as a website, I think is really essential for all businesses.
Yeah.
And you probably already created it anyways, so you might as well optimize it.
Very true. That's so funny that you said that, because I've noticed recently on Instagram, like everybody's doing that with this video, with music, and they're pointing. Sometimes they're not pointing in the right place, which I find comical. You know, I what is that? Like, what is it? I feel so lost because
yeah, well, it's because of TikTok. Okay, so you know, we all know about the power of TikTok, and a lot of people have kind of coined it edutainment, which I don't know where that started, so please don't come after me. But like edutainment, right? It's entertaining because that's what people want, but it's also educational. And TikTok is a very interesting thing. I often talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are like, oh, I'm on TikTok, but all I see are dance videos. I'm like, yeah, but the algorithm on TikTok is very smart. The second you start finding other pieces of content, your whole feed changes. So like I see all entrepreneur stuff because I love to just see what people are doing. But Reels is essentially Instagram's take on TikTok. So they were like, well, we want to do this too. So they created Reels. I find Reels to be easier because I'm already on Instagram. I don't need another platform. Do not want to go that route. And so Reels, I think right now, you know, at the time of this recording, Instagram loves them and they want you to make them. So if you're on Instagram, they're a really great way to push engagement. I mean, people are seeing, you know, double their follower view count. Now that doesn't mean you just need to make like something viral. That's not going to help you grow your business, right? I have a video actually of me talking to a wine glass that has like 13,000 views. And like, I didn't make that to sign a new client. I just made that for fun. But so you want to make sure that the content that you're creating is actually leading to, you know, a sale and nurturing the audience. But yeah, that's essentially what it is, you know, viral video content.
I find TikTok highly entertaining. I think TikTok is so fun. And I made 2 reels. I was just pulling up my stats here. They didn't go viral. One of them is about meatballs. Anyways. But I had somebody say to me, like, Erin, you got to get on TikTok because, you know, your messaging is so interesting. It's like, but like my messaging doesn't, for most health coaches, I would imagine, I cannot bridge the gap between how the type of content I want to share in my social feeds can be delivered via pointing at words and dancing. Right. It's like, it doesn't, I mean, it's a leap I'm not willing to make, but whatever, you're right. Yeah, it's fine. it's fine.
You definitely have to be willing to do it, right? It has an element of time consuming for sure. But I think what is working so well with those type of videos is that again, they're super entertaining. And look, you're not 100 people that watch it, or then all 100 of them are gonna sign up for your email list, but you might get a few people that like move through. And I know a lot of people who've built really successful businesses using TikTok in the coaching world, because they will say things that are different, or to be honest, it's based on the song that you choose. So if you ever want to get a lot of views, choose a great song.
Number one. I do not have a TikTok account. But I guess this is how everything starts. Like I have two older kids that are now adults that were talking about TikTok a couple of years ago, like several years ago.
Right.
And they're still on it. They still love it. And so in my mind, it's for like these young, that's not my target audience. I have yet to hear a woman in my target age group talk about all the fun shit she saw on TikTok. Most of the people that I would target, they're really still more Facebook, but that's the reason like my kids are no longer on Facebook. It's for old ladies. You know what I mean? It's for adults and businesses, and that's not their jam, but that's not who I'm marketing to. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't women in the demographic I'm shooting for that are watching TikTok, but they probably also still have Facebook. They probably also still have
exactly.
Instagram.
And that's why I tell my clients, like, I am not one to jump on a new bandwagon. Like, we don't even have time to talk about Clubhouse, but like, there's always going to be a new marketing platform. Yeah. And you really need to assess, like, where is your energy best fit? I think that this is like, you could do all the platforms, but is your ideal customer there? And hey, do you want to do it? Like, do you actually enjoy that process? If not, like, you're going to hate it and you're going to have trouble with consistency. And TikTok is interesting, and all marketing platforms obviously are very interesting because they can change so quickly. And one of the things that we've seen with like these viral videos is COVID is what moved more like 30 somethings to TikTok and these different platforms because we were bored. Right? And we were like, what's happening here? So again, those platforms are really strong algorithm based. Sometimes as business owners, we hate that. But really, if you're using the things that we talked about before, like search engine, really, optimizing for keywords, looking at things that are trending, they can be used to your benefit to get in front of your ideal customer. But there's an art to all of these platforms. I think we used to teach that, like, just get on Instagram and start posting stuff and use 30 hashtags. It's like, it doesn't work like that anymore. Sorry. Which is why I like blogging.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You've got me really fired up to blog again. And actually, you touched on this a while ago in this conversation where like I'm posting on Instagram regularly, let's say. And each one of those is a blog post that never makes it to my blog. It's like, why am I not putting this on my blog? And I had this idea of hiring like a virtual assistant to help me with this. Like, take all my Instagram posts, put them on my blog, and also jot down the bullet points of what I talked about in that blog post. And then I'm going to get on and do like a YouTube video and turn that into a podcast and like everything, just more of this evergreen search engine type stuff. Because I don't really want to be on my phone all day. I'm tired of it. I don't want to be on Instagram all day long. I do get almost all of my clients from Instagram currently. It's like, damn it, because I would like to get off my phone at some point in the near future. And so that's the way to do it. That repurposing, right?
Yeah. My clients actually call me the repurposing queen. I have like free guides all about repurposing. It's kind of my jam. Because again, when I was starting my business, I was like, all right, we've got this much time, Michelle. How do you show up consistently without constantly creating new stuff? And so I'll give you an example of my business, how I repurpose my content. So I record a weekly video. I have a show called Mondays with Michelle. It used to be live, but I travel and I value that. So it's no longer live, right? I'm the CEO, as I like to say. So I pre-record this content at the beginning of the month. They're about 15 minutes each video. And those videos are on Instagram and Facebook every Monday. That video content gets transcribed into a blog post. That blog post is then created into a full-length blog post just because of my transcription and making some header changes based on SEO. and it becomes a blog post. Then we take that blog post and typically create 2 to 3 pieces of content for social media. So I might create a reel from the same piece of content. I'm showing the Instagram video on Instagram. We're creating a graphic or something from something that I said in the blog post. And then we're also repurposing that content to go out on YouTube and Pinterest. So I have one piece of content that I created as a video that now is on all these different platforms and reaching people at different stages of the buying process.
Can I ask a specific question about Pinterest?
Yep.
Because I love Pinterest for like home renovation projects, but I can't wrap my head around how it works for maybe like coaching. What kind of stuff, like infographics or? Okay.
So I about 90% of my traffic to my website comes from Pinterest, and I average about 22,000 views a month from Pinterest, if that gives you like a good number range. I would say every health coach needs to be on Pinterest.
Even ones that don't do recipes, like if you don't do recipes or workouts.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm talking about branding, right?
Yeah.
So I'm talking about branding and marketing and content creation. So again, Pinterest is a powerful platform because it's search engine. So people are going there. We don't really, I mean, I don't know about you, but I very rarely scroll my feed. I'm like looking for specific things in the search bar. I'm getting that type of content. And so it's really easy to target quality leads on Pinterest. Whereas Facebook, we post something and we're like, hope my ideal customer sees this.
Right.
That's how I feel about Facebook ads as well, right? We're like, let me throw this, I use a paper airplane. Let me throw this paper airplane into this abyss and hope that it like lands on the right person. Pinterest ads, which is something else that I use and teach, are very, very targeted ads to people who are searching for something, ultimately leading them to your website or your opt-in or a low purchase price. So it does not have to be recipes. Do recipes do well? Of course, but a lot of recipes or infographics are saved, right? They're not clicked through. We want to focus on content that people are clicking through to land on your website, driving all that traffic to your website. So I recommend Pinterest for every business. I even have career coaches who use it. And there's like a lot of women who are searching for terms specifically, like how to change careers in your 40s. And they'll create blog posts specifically about that and, their content. So I always think of Pinterest as like a journal. Like we talked about Google before. Like, I mean, I have searched for some weird stuff on Pinterest. From like alternative solutions to things or whatever. It's kind of where we go for like our deep, dark secrets. And as a marketer, you can really use that to get in front of your ideal customer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, to use Erin's point, I do have a Pinterest account, but she's right. I'm usually looking for a recipe or I'm usually looking for a workout I can steal. Yeah. I've never really tried to use it to search for anything else, but then maybe I'm just a lazy Pinterester and I don't really know how to use it.
Well, also as like marketers, like we're constantly like creating content and putting stuff out there. So like when we get on social media, we're like, let me just zone out and like look up like cool decor items that I can do for the weekend. We're not really in like full research mode, but our audience who has that specific problem is, right? They're in that mode of like, how do I solve this problem? What are my solutions? What's a quick fix? And by providing that through a platform like Pinterest, where your content doesn't disappear, it lives on for a very long time. I have a pin that I almost wish would not keep getting traffic because I love to update the graphic because the branding is just like not great. But it drives thousands and thousands of views to my website without paid marketing every single month and it's all about emotional branding. Like who knew?
Wow. Interesting.
Well, I was poking at it Pinterest while you were talking. And I was like, what would like, I've never been on that part of Pinterest, the part where people are searching for like fat loss, for example. I literally never been to that section of Pinterest, and I pulled up and it was a lot of before and after pictures and workout videos and stuff. But then you have like these title cards that says like 15 tips to nudge fat loss after 35. And all that does is clicks out to a blog post. Like the image itself
takes you to your website.
It takes you to your website.
It doesn't, the image itself doesn't have to be the solution. It's kind of
and it shouldn't be. And
Right.
I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong with Pinterest. Those again are saves, right? Those are those things that we save and we're like, oh, we'll go to it later. That's not leading them to your website. We want those like, click through and read this, click through to get this free guide, click through to watch this video. That's getting people to your website, and then bring it full circle to the branding piece. That's why your brand is so important, because now you've got them on your website. You've got about 5 seconds to capture them, right? And that's where like your photos and your story and how you introduce the blog post, those are key. And that's where you create these like lifelong, fans. Just last week, I had 2 new private clients say, I found you on Pinterest. I have a pin all about writing an about me page for your website. And I know it's something that they're working on. I know it's something that they're interested in. That's not the only thing that I teach, but it's a foot in the door, right? And so they browsed my website, liked it, submitted an application, and here we are. So
I like it.
are you all getting on Pinterest
I learned,
now?
you know what? It's funny. We talk about marketing all the time on this show. We talk to a bunch of different marketers, and there's a lot that we talked about today that really has never come up before. So I love that. Thank you. And I there was another question that I had. So going back to telling your story, where does like search engine optimization fit into that? Or are we not as worried about that for that portion of your website?
Yeah, I don't think we're as worried about that for that piece. Again, think about SEO, Pinterest, those platforms again as like kind of like opening the door, like, hey, what's up? That brand awareness. And then that like connection, that's where story comes into play. So, you want to build that connection very quickly. And that's why the homepage of your website, that first chunk, that photo, what you say about the work that you do, that, if people bounce off that really fast, if it's not captivating, having a little bit of story on your homepage to bring people in. The second most visited page on a website is the story page. It's the about me page. So, crafting and actually sharing your story. I am not a big advocate for about me pages that are 100% about your ideal customer, because like, I didn't click here to know more about me. I clicked here to learn about you. So like, take the time to tell the story. The sidebar on the blog, share a little blurb of your story there. There's all these opportunities with photo and storytelling, where that's where we like build that trust instantly, that connection, and keep them engaged for longer.
I love it. Awesome.
Great. Tons of takeaways from this, like just tons of business activities that a coach who's growing a business, building a business could just start chipping away at. And I that's the kind of stuff I like to do. I like little chippers. It's like, if I just kind of plug away at, optimizing my search engine stuff and getting my blog posts off Instagram and into my actual blog. And that just feels so intentional. And I think that's kind of what lacks for a lot of people when they're getting into entrepreneurship, because they've never tried it before. And I feel like people just need that structure. And this kind of provides a nice little to-do list.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, focus on building the brand, build that solid foundation. You have it. Now it's time to just put it out into the world. You don't need to go back and keep tweaking it and editing it, right? Like, let's at least get some eyes on it. And then, like you said, it's about choosing one thing, chipping away at it for 30, 60, 90 days, optimizing it, moving on to the next thing. You don't have to do it all at once. I just feel like we get really overwhelmed with marketing because there's so many options. We talked about a ton here. I'm not expecting every single person to blog, use Pinterest, YouTube, and TikTok in their first 6 months of running a business. That would be insane. I have a team, right? I have people who help me with this. I have systems in place. So, find the thing that like excites you the most, get the information that you need, start chipping away, and really just focusing on that, those consistent leads to your brand, getting your brand exposed.
I was thinking as we were kind of wrapping that up is like, in health coaching, well, and probably any coaching to that end, there's this idea of process goals versus outcome goals.
Right.
And we can be so distracted by outcomes that we don't even bother getting into the process. Right. So I'm thinking, like I touched on earlier, I'm going to hire somebody to take all my Instagram posts, make them all into blog posts, make them all into YouTube scripts, make them all into, it's like, or I could just pick one. I could just pick one of my Instagram posts and I could practice repurposing it to the blog, to YouTube, to Pinterest. I could do it one at a time. I don't have to do all 1,000 of my Instagram posts in one shot. Do you know what I mean?
No, space it out, actually. Do it weekly. Otherwise, you're going to have all this content. You're going to have to then go share it in all these different places. Yeah, like one thing at a time.
I love it. All right. So first things first is learn to tell your story and embrace it. And then second is getting really clear on who you're telling that story to and why. Mm-hmm. Who are you trying to resonate with? What problem are you solving? How do you solve it? Create and add value to that message. And all of that goes into building a website that people can connect with. But everything else we talked about in the latter half of this is how you get people to actually view the website. So everybody listening, you have to start someplace. If you are brand new, start with your story. If you've already got all that, pick a place along this conversation that you think you're at and do one thing first, one thing at a time, and give yourself the grace of mastering one thing at a time. Because I think that's where people get scared off. You're so right. One thing at a time. So thank you for that additional nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, of course. Wow, this was fun. I love talking about all of these things. So.
I know, me too.
Like lit up.
Where can people find you? So and is there anything people should be? I heard you mention you had a download on your website. So tell us where we should send people to come find more about
absolutely. So my home base is brandmerry.com. It's brandmerry.com. And that's where you can really kind of choose your path, as I like to say. So if you're just starting out in the branding space, I have a ton of blogs, as we've talked about, all about brand story and your ideal customer. And there's a free branding guide. If you're moving more into marketing, then there's a lot of resources on marketing, and there's a guide on repurposing as well. So all of that information is on my website, my home base. And then if you want to know just like more about me and who I am as a person, then I'd love to connect on Instagram. And I'm at Michelle Knight Co on Instagram, and always posting updates and fun videos of me pointing and dancing for everyone to watch.
They are entertaining, I have to say.
I know. I'm a sucker.
Great. This has been really awesome, Michelle. Thank you for teaching us all. And I think we have some successful coaches out there marketing and branding themselves from this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michelle.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've been listening at Health Coach Radio, you'll know that we're all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches, but most importantly, helping to further legitimize this exploding industry. Erin and I have disclosed often that we're on the faculty of the Primal Health Coach Institute, founded by none other than the health and wellness legend, Mark Sisson. And we've interviewed dozens of guests from just about every different health coaching program you can think of, and who practice in just about any conceivable way you can think of. But our allegiance is to the health coaching industry in its totality, first and foremost. It's our desire to continuously and unapologetically lift and promote this industry that nudged us to create this podcast for you in the first place. It's this same yearning that encouraged us to take the educational offering at our health coaching school to the next level. We are so proud to offer the Primal Health Coach Level 2 certification course, which, when combined with our primary course, the Primal Health Coach certification course, not only satisfies the educational requirements to sit for the board exam, but is specifically designed to teach advanced coaching mastery. You will work closely with a small class of peers through this 12-week, very intensive, live online classroom experience to learn how to execute a coaching relationship that is truly transformational. You'll learn and practice how to ask powerful questions, what it means to hold space for your clients, but most importantly, how to actually do it. You'll learn about the craft of motivational interviewing and the nuances of habit change, goal setting, and accountability, and how to nurture your client's own inner knowing, their intuition, and their own self-efficacy, so that they will graduate from your care a truly transformed person. You want a big, successful, powerful coaching practice. And maybe you're devouring our episodes looking for the silver bullet that's going to launch your business into the upper echelons. We've said it a million times and we'll say it again. Your coaching skills are what will make or break you and set you apart for success in this field. So if you're looking to level up your coaching skills and maybe dial up your credential and become a board-eligible health coach, look no further. You can learn more about PHCI's Level 2 program at primalhealthcoach.com/level 2. But if you would value talking to a real person about your path to being a masterful coach and perhaps a board certified coach, book some time with me personally. You can access my calendar at primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or just call me. You can reach me at 844-307-7662. Thank you for listening to Health Coach Radio, and I hope I get to talk to you soon.